This is the DallasCowboys.com Draft Show. Your war room for insider news and draft analysis from deep within the confines of Cowboys headquarters at the Star in Frisco.
42 days away from the NFL draft. It is going to be here before we know it. Zach Wolchuk alongside Nick Harris here on the draft show. It's just the two of us.
Yeah, we got everybody else out. We boxed them all out.
Finally.
Now we can talk about Jalen Wright for 60 straight minutes. I'm so excited.
Let's do it. Jalen Wright and Bucky Irving. That is what we're going to do for the next hour here of the draft show. Brian Broad is taking the day to go fishing with his son Bennett. I hope that he enjoys that.
Love that.
Hopefully Aisha starts to feel better soon. And, of course, Kyle, busy man.
Yeah.
Busy man, that Kyle Yeomans. But they'll be rejoining us, I'm sure, on Tuesday. But we had some big news going down yesterday. I know you have an article up on DallasCowboys.com. Cowboys making a signing. Eric Kendricks, a linebacker. Big question now, is that going to change things from the draft? But what stands out to you about the Cowboys signing Eric Kendricks, who certainly has a good connection and familiarity with Mike Zimmer, Cowboys' new defensive coordinator?
Yeah, 100%. Just kind of walking you through the day yesterday. We were yesterday morning, we all woke up thinking Eric Kendricks would be a San Francisco 49er.
Mm-hmm.
That was who he had agreed to join whenever the legal tampering period was going on earlier in the week. And then, as the day went on, Mike Zimmer made a call, and Eric Kendricks made a call, and sure enough, the two were able to agree on a deal before last night. And when I walked out of the building yesterday, there wasn't any buzz about anything. That's why I left the building. And when I was on my way home on the road, Eric Kendricks news drops. So these things come together fast, and this was definitely one that I think helps the Cowboys in the long run for sure. We know that they needed a presence there in the second level, and not only a presence, but they needed a big, a reliable tackler and a guy that can stop the run. Eric Kendricks is on the back half of his career. Sure. I think everybody can agree on that. His best football is behind him, but that doesn't mean that he cannot be productive for this defense, and they just need somebody to fill those gaps and stop the run. That's all they need a linebacker to do there in the second level. I think Eric Kendricks gives them that. They didn't have it last year. I think if you throw a presence like Eric Kendricks in for the playoff game against Green Bay, I'm not saying it's a different result, but they're having to change some things with that running game. Aaron Jones probably doesn't have as productive of a day as he had. Eric Kendricks comes to the Cowboys 8 straight seasons with 100-plus tackles. In that same stretch, the Cowboys have only had 9 100-plus tacklers. So
that's an amazing stat. I saw you put that. I was thinking, what?
Yeah.
That is shocking.
Yeah, a lot of those were safeties, too, which is wild. Like half of those are safeties. But
struggled with injuries. You've had a lot of missed time at that position.
Yeah, 100%. And I think for Eric Kendricks, we're talking about on-field presence. We're talking about the run stopping. We talk about filling the gaps. We're talking about leadership aspect as well. Not only having the rapport with Mike Zimmer that he'll be able to kind of bring in and be that symmetry with the defense to be able to, kind of force a smooth transition with those guys. He can quarterback that defense. He knows what that defense is. He played in it for 7 seasons under Mike Zimmer in Minnesota. He was drafted by Mike Zimmer. Those two have a really good relationship, and I think he's going to be an extension of what Mike Zimmer can bring to this defense in 2024. I think that's probably the most important piece that he brings is that leadership aspect and making all 11 guys around him better. He's going to be a great locker room guy. The media is going to love him. He's a great interview too. I'm excited to see what Eric Kendricks brings to this building. Again, his best football is behind him, but I think he can bring a lot to this team next year.
Well, you mentioned the IQ, the ability to read, diagnose, react. Certainly, maybe is he a step slower than he was in his 2019 All-Pro season? Yeah, absolutely. You could look at that. But I think for me, the big thing that jumps out is, Zim's introductory presser. What did he talk about? He wants to get everybody speaking the same language. Eric Kendricks is going to help be a player on the field that outside of the coaching staff, he can get everybody on the same page, speaking that same language. Maybe he wears the green dot defensively as well. So now the big question will be, and I know you mentioned you've gotten that a lot. I've seen that too. Does this end up changing the Cowboys' plans in the NFL draft with linebacker? You got Damone Clark. You've got Eric Kendricks. You got Micah. I mean, do you want to play him more off ball? You certainly still have DeMarvion Overshown, but expecting most likely Leighton Vander Esch not to be a part of this thing, and then Marquise Bell, does he shift back to safety? I think absolutely. Linebacker is still in play in the draft.
Yeah, absolutely it is. Talking about the linebacker room really quick, you mentioned DeMarvion Overshown coming back from that ACL injury. The expectation is that he'll be back in time for training camp, so he'll be able to step into that second level and not only bring youth, but I think he brings a little bit of creative experience as well from his days at Texas, because he played in the third level.
Yeah.
He played in the second level. He lined up off the edge as a pass rusher. I mean, he has so much knowledge of the game on the defensive side of the ball. He's already clicking with Mike Zimmer. I think he's going to bring an added element to the defense, and I think some people might forget about. Not Texas fans, though. I know they're not. And then Damone Clark being able to bring what he brought last year, bringing that back. Leighton Vander Esch, a decision is not made yet with his future. There's still a lot of back and forth as far as medical opinions and things of the sort going on there. We'll see how his future plays out. But with or without Leighton Vander Esch, I think Eric Kendricks does bring that that middle linebacker presence that you do need, and its reliability. But talking about the draft specifically, they're going to go get another linebacker, 100%. We look at the depth. When only one healthy linebacker is left on the 53-man roster at the end of the season, you got to go get multiple. It's not just going to be Eric Kendricks. Only 2 30 visits have been reported so far, and it's Trevin Wallace, linebacker out of Kentucky, and Edgerrin Cooper, linebacker out of Texas A&M. So if both of those guys, that they're going to be in the building, they are going to be looking at them really hard in the draft. They are going to go get another guy. Does it become less of a priority? Maybe, because you look at the tackle position, you look at the center position, running back, those positions need to get addressed. So it may not be a day 2 position anymore. It could be, but it may not be anymore. It gives you a little bit more flexibility there, but you still have to go get another body in that room.
Yeah, you absolutely do, and I think that's interesting with Edgerrin Cooper. I think we're both on the same page, and I think everybody here on the draft show, there's not a first-round linebacker that we look at and say, okay, I mean, maybe, if Peyton Wilson were healthy, we've said that a bunch. Maybe if Peyton Wilson were healthy, he'd be your guy. But I do think that this looks like, okay, how the Cowboys board is falling. It's probably offensive line, in my opinion, in the first round. Running back is still definitely a need that maybe you prioritize ahead of linebacker now. But third round, you could look at it. Fourth round, I think there's going to be some options. I mean, we've talked about it with Tommy Eichenberg from Ohio State. Could be a name. Jalen Ford out of Texas. Yep. Which range is he going to go? He could be in that third, fourth round range. Tyron Hopper, Mizzou linebacker, which we could talk a little bit about. I know you mentioned that was a formal visit for the Cowboys there at the Combine. And, he's a player. I don't know if we've really brought him up and talked about him a ton. I was watching him after you mentioned that he was a formal visit. That's a dude that's got coverage ability. He's got speed. He's got some instincts. There's a lot to like about his game as well. And then we mentioned a lot during, the Shrine Bowl and the Senior Bowl, Darius Muasau of UCLA is another very instinctive player that you could get there at day 3. So there's a lot of options to where now you probably don't have to press at the position, but there's players that you still like that could come in and give you some added depth and value. Yeah,
talking about Tyron Hopper, I compared him to Micah McFadden of the New York Giants on my notes here. A really long frame that I think it really shows up in open field tackling, and you need a guy that can be reliable in tackling in that second level. He probably lacks the instincts that you want there in the second level. He doesn't fill run lanes correctly every single time, but I think having a presence like Eric Kendricks or Damone Clark, DeMarvion Overshown, that's going to help increase that and get that better for Hopper. That's coaching, and that can get better as time goes on. I bank on those traits. I bank on that length and athleticism. Yeah, I think Tyron Hopper would be a great addition to this linebacker room, but there's going to be options there on day 3. If they feel like they need to wait until day 3 to go get that linebacker to add in that room, I mean, there's still going to be some guys. I mean, you mentioned Jalen Ford, a potential round 3, round 4 option. Trevin Wallace, as we mentioned, is top 30 visit. That's a day 3 guy. John Trey Hunter out of Georgia State. That's a guy I've really enjoyed watching. And Nathaniel Watson out of Mississippi State was a first-team All-SECer last year for the Bulldogs, and being able to be there in that second level and be really productive. You want to get a productive guy who played in a good conference, that's Nathaniel Watson. And then Tyrese Knight, one of the more athletic linebackers in the class out of UTEP. So, and then one other formal meeting that they had that's kind of in that day 3 range from Washington, Edifwan Ulofoshio. I think I did too. We're just going to roll with it, but that's another guy that they're looking at there in that day 3 range.
Yeah, that's an interesting name as well. I mean, you mentioned more on Hopper. 3 seasons at Florida, transferred there to Mizzou. And he crushed it when you talk about athleticism scores at the Combine. He had the 3rd best overall athletic score among linebackers at the Combine, long, fast. I think I agree with what you see there when it comes to the instincts. There were times I felt like he's a little hesitant because he doesn't trust his eyes and what he's seeing. It's like he's got the athletic ability to be there. He sees it. He just takes a beat, a little late to process at times, and he gets a little lost when he's having to play in zone. But really good athlete. I think I've got a 5 on him him. So you could definitely get him day 3, but there's options there. I don't think that this changes things at all at linebacker. And again, like in the second round, we'll go through some options here. I went through and found 3 different mock draft scenarios. What would we like? I mean, if somebody's sitting there in the second or third round, if it's a Junior Colson from Michigan or an Edgerrin Cooper from Texas A&M,
Yeah.
If he's the best player on your board there at 56, I don't think the Cowboys are saying, oh, no, Eric Kendricks is our guy.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're not going to go ahead and pull the trigger if they really like a guy like Edgerrin Cooper from A&M.
I agree. I think if Cooper's there at 56, that's almost like a BPA type pick that you would have to be able to make and pair him in that room. Now, it kind of depends on what you do in the first round. We've talked about either tackle or center, and as free agency plays out, we're starting to get a clearer picture of what exactly is going to be up front next season. I still feel like tackle is the more bigger priority for me. You have guys at center that can compete with each other and step in and get that starting opportunity. I don't feel like you have that at left tackle right now. Will it be perfect at center? Absolutely not. And there's a good chance it doesn't work out, but I think it's a better chance it works out than if you roll out what's there at left tackle. So for me, it's left tackle in the first round. Absolutely, got to be able to have a guy that can plug and play. There's a couple of options. I think they're going to have to be really open-minded as far as switching guys from right tackle to left tackle. You look at Tyler Guyton, you look at Amarius Mims and what they have brought to their respective teams. Do you feel comfortable moving them to left tackle? That'd be a question that they would have to ask themselves. We've talked about Jordan Morgan, short arms. Are you comfortable leaving him out there at left tackle with guys that can get on his chest pretty easily?
I think a lot of teams might I wonder if the Cowboys look at him as a guard and not a tackle.
Yeah, it's certainly a question. We talked a lot about it on Tuesday on the show. I think whatever team does draft him, they're going to have to be okay with guys getting up on his chest, and they're going to have to be okay with his power if he can be able to mitigate that deficiency. But I think with Jordan Morgan, he still does have the athleticism if he wanted to play out at tackle. But for me, he's a guard. I would rather see him at guard there in that phone booth type range. But going back to priorities as far as first round goes, I'd be okay with the center if they drafted them, if they drafted one in the first round, but get that tackle, especially in this tackle class. Make sure you get a good one that can step in at left tackle, and then you can figure out center either as the draft goes on or as a preseason goes on with the 2 guys you got.
I'm with you. I just feel 42 days away, the closer we get, that pick at 24, unless you just completely get wiped, it's going to be an offensive tackle. And the 2 guys that I think I'm kind of looking at that they're probably going to take would be Tyler Guyton from Oklahoma. But if Amarius Mims is there out of Georgia, I think that's the pick. The problem is I think Amarius Mims might have tested his way into the top 15 picks.
Yeah.
I think there's a team that is looking at Amarius Mims and saying this could be the best tackle 4 years from now in a very rich tackle draft. And they're going to go ahead and say he's too good to pass up. The one that's interesting to me, if he were to fall, is J.C. Latham out of Alabama. Because Latham, to me, is a true right tackle. Do they feel as though you could kick him over to the left side? I just wonder if he's athletic enough. I love him. I absolutely do. Super consistent, beautiful kick out, lateral movement. I think he can play a little high at times, and depending on hand positioning, can get caught on the outside. But he is nasty. Absolutely love his play temperament. I think he could kick inside to guard more so than I think he could play left tackle. That's a big question with J.C. Latham. I wonder if him and Kingsley Suamataia out of BYU.
Yeah.
I think are the 2 guys I'm looking at and saying, man, I think they might have to stay on the right side.
Yeah, it's a little difficult too, and I think this is really where the scouts will be tested as far as, is there a guy that you see that has played right tackle mostly during his college career that you could feel comfortable playing on the left side? I mean, you mentioned Kingsley Suamataia, you got Tyler Guyton, you got, Amarius Mims, J.C. Latham, Talisi Fuaga. All these guys primarily right tackle during their days. You can look at Patrick Paul if you feel comfortable moving on him in the second round. I know we've talked about him. There isn't as much comfort there. Jordan Morgan, primarily left tackle, but we've talked about the short arms a little bit. Graham Barton, primarily left tackle at Duke, but he's an interior guy. We've talked about him as a center option and feeling comfortable with him being a center option. So it's there's going to be a lot that's going to be falling on these scouts as far as looking at these tackles and seeing what they do at right tackle that can translate to the left side if they can swing.
One of the other positions that I wonder if for you, if you're thinking, okay, we've talked about tackle, we've talked about center, how much of a pressing need is running back now becoming.
Yeah.
With Tony Pollard gone to the Tennessee Titans in free agency, Cowboys still have not made a move at running back. Right now, technically, Rico Dowdle is still a free agent and out there and available. Is running back, depending on what happens between now and the NFL draft, becoming more of a pressing need to where, hey, at 56 in the second round, if there's a Trey Benson from Florida State, maybe you love Jonathan Brooks, and they know more about the medical than any other team in the National Football League since their team doctor did that surgery. If they want him, they go ahead and say, hey, running back now is becoming more of a priority on our board.
Yeah, and I think so. Regardless of what happens here in free agency, you're going to have to go get one in the draft, you would think. And as these days go on and these big running backs come off the board, and, we talked about Zach Moss a little bit on the show these last few weeks.
He was my dude.
That was my guy as far as free agents go.
I was with you 100%.
And his price went a little bit higher than the Cowboys expected. They were involved in those conversations up until the very end, but eventually ended up with the Cincinnati Bengals on a $4 million a year deal. So now you're looking at guys like J.K. Dobbins. Are you comfortable with him coming off of all those injuries? Clyde Edwards-Helaire hasn't really been productive as a first-round pick out of Kansas City, but is still young at 24. Deontay Foreman, Ezekiel Elliott return, Alexander Madison. I mean, so there's still some young guys in the free agent market, but regardless, you're going to have to go draft a guy that you can develop around whatever free agent pickup that you do make, because you need a young guy on a young contract for 4 years that can come in and be ready to bring you explosion out of that backfield. That's what Dak Prescott needs. That's what this offense needs.
Good thing is, and we've mentioned maybe not as good of a running back class as last year, but there's guys we like. Jalen Wright, we joked about that out of Tennessee. Love him. In the third round, if he were there, I would pull the trigger. Braylon Allen, another guy that they talked with out of Wisconsin. Big back, 6'2". Isaac Guerrero out of Louisville, I think, is gaining steam throughout this process. And Audric Estime, of course, out of Notre Dame, I think is also a very, very intriguing player. A guy that I have seen, and I know after the combine has got a lot of buzz, is Tyrone Tracy Jr. From Purdue. And I'm not sure how much we've really given him time and talked about him on the draft show. That's a guy, converted wide receiver, just spent his first year at running back, sixth-year senior, spent his last 2 years at Purdue, started his career at Iowa. I believe his first year was actually at community college, and then he transferred. But you see obviously he's got the wide receiver ability to run routes. He's shifting the open field. The issue is pass protection. And in that scenario where we were talking with Brian Broaddus on the G-Bag Nation yesterday, Brian was arguing for A.J. Dillon as a free agent addition because of his pass protection ability. Tyrone Tracy Jr., it's not that I don't think he can do it. He's just so raw. He just doesn't know what he's doing when it comes to
coming into the league.
Sliding and picking guys up. But my gosh, you can see the traits, the upside, the burst, the natural ability in open field with Tyrone Tracy Jr., 5'11", 209 out of Purdue against Michigan. He's a guy that tough sledding, but eventually he's going to pop a big run throughout the game. So that's a name that I think teams are looking at day 3. If they don't end up taking one of their guys, maybe he could be a steal later rounds. The one running back I want to throw out there that I'm not super high on, that I know people have been asking about, is Jawar Jordan out of Louisville. I don't know how you feel about Jawar Jordan, but I did not love the tape on him. I mean, he's a guy in the red zone, certainly. He showed some ability there, and he's also a bigger back like Braylon Allen, but I just didn't see a ton of upside compared to some of these other running backs that we've talked about.
I'm with you. I don't even think he's the best running back on his team coming out of this draft process. Here's Beam firing up the highlights. Let's go, Beam. I put in my notes that he's a downhill runner with intriguing 3-down ability, although I don't trust it. And it's because whenever you see him run out into open field outside of the tackles, literally as he's running out in the open field here. But whenever you get him outside of the tackles, he doesn't have that consistent production that you would see out of Isaac Guerrero or one of these other big backs. And as I'm saying this, man, Beam's just firing out every outside run that he can find in the film back there. But I'm with you a little bit there on Jawar Jordan. The one thing I might disagree with you with is I think he does have complementary back potential. I think he can come in and be able to be a complementary back in a system, just kind of depending on whatever back that you get in free agency. If you're looking at it from the Cowboys' perspective, he might be an intriguing guy to have in those red zone opportunities, like you mentioned. And
the receiving ability, you just saw a highlight there. If you're watching it, he does have that to be able to help out. But to me, he's a guy that I think in an outside zone scheme those type of teams are going to look at him, whether that's a San Francisco, a Miami, a Green Bay. They might look at him and be like, okay, we love him. But I don't see a super physical guy to get a ton of push and short yardage, lacks some power. He's long. Apparently, he's a really, really good character guy as well, which I think teams are going to like. He's probably going to crush the meetings. But he's got some intriguing traits. But for me, there's just running backs in this draft class that I like a little bit more than Jawar Jordan, running back at a Louisville, 5'10", 185. Okay, let's do some Twitter on the 20 coming up on the other side. And then I've got 3 different 3-round mock scenarios. We're going to go through these. Which stack do we like better? Twitter on the 20 coming up next as the draft show rolls on.
I'm Dak Prescott, quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys.
And they snap it to Prescott, who looks right. It's not there. He escapes left. He'll run for a first down.
Just like football, when it comes to crypto, it's important to have a team you can trust. With blockchain.com, I know I'm in good hands. Since 2011, they've been trusted by millions around the world to buy, sell, and trade cryptocurrency.
Prescott's going to run this himself. Run it up the middle, and he scores.
Whether you're new to crypto or an active trader, they've got you covered. What are you waiting for? Get started at blockchain.com.
I'm Darren Woodson, former Dallas Cowboy player and Super Bowl champion. When I played in the NFL at a high level, I relied on my vision to see the field. As I started getting older, I noticed my vision wasn't as good, and I was getting frustrated from wearing my glasses all day. I went to Laser Care Eye Center, and Dr. G talked about all the options. Thanks to technology and Laser Care Eye Center, I can see near, far, and between. Don't fumble your vision any longer. Visit them at dfweyes.com and tell them Darren sent you. They got me back on my game.
In a stressful world, Lincoln provides balance and calm amidst the chaos by creating sanctuaries that move you through the world with ease. Our vehicles make your time richer and more uplifting with human-centric design, intelligent technology, and powerful performance. As the official luxury vehicle of the Dallas Cowboys, driving a Lincoln is just another way to show your team pride. Experience our full lineup of luxury vehicles, including the Corsair, Aviator, Navigator, and Nautilus at Lincoln.com.
Hi, I'm Danny McCray, Dallas Cowboys alumni player here with Smoothie King. And Smoothie King wants to ask you, what's that sound? That's the sound of us magically transforming our smoothie bowls into 2 new decadent flavors. Dig into a cool acai or pitaya bowl, handcrafted with crunchy, purely Elizabeth granola, fresh strawberries, and finished with a velvety chocolate hazelnut drizzle. Perfect for breakfast, lunch, or anytime you want to munch. And that's the sound of you making them disappear. Smoothie bowls, now in 2 new decadent flavors. Only at Smoothie King, the official smoothie of the Dallas Cowboys.
This is the DallasCowboys.com Draft Show.
All right, it is time for one of the best segments in the history of the draft show. Zach Wolchuk hanging out with Nick Harris with you on this Thursday, and we like to call that some Twitter on the 20.
Twitter on the 20.
All right, Nick, you have taken on the responsibilities today for figuring out these draft questions. I hope we got some good ones today. Fire them off.
Yeah, we didn't quite have Kyle's presence on Twitter on the 20 this time around, but we still got some good questions here. This one comes from Joe DeMayo. Give me your favorite pairing of a veteran running back still available in free agency, along with a draft pick for the Cowboys. His example was sign A.J. Dillon, draft Trey Benson. Take it wherever you gentlemen wish. I'm going to let you start with this one, Zach.
Okay, well, I do love Trey Benson. I think Trey Benson is the top running back in this year's draft. I am not super big on A.J. Dillon. I think he is an injury-prone back. But, hey, that would be a good compliment because I think Trey Benson is a 3-down back for me. You look at his ability not only in the passing game. I love his running style. I think he's downhill. He certainly gives you some speed, burst. I think he's got long speed, home running ability, and I think he's actually solid in pass protection. But that's where A.J. Dillon, to me, excels. If you're looking for a complimentary guy, I think A.J. Dillon can come in there and be a good pass pro, and then maybe you're looking at more of a speed player. But I'm in on that. I mean, Trey Benson, to me, he's the top back. If you're drafting him, eventually he is going to be the workhorse back in your backfield. Yeah. A.J. Dillon is going to fall back into similar to what he was behind Chris Jones there at Green Bay. Eventually, that's going to be Trey Benson's RB1 job to lose.
Yeah, and who was the free agent you're pairing him with? You said A.J. Dillon?
Well, if I had to pair anybody with I think Dante Foreman. I think Dante Foreman's the one free agent back that's out there right now that I would like to bring in. I think he's used to that. He's filled those roles in Carolina. He did it last year with Chicago. He's an unselfish player. I think he's also a very well-rounded back. So I'd go Foreman paired with a Benson or a Jalen Wright or a Ray Davis out of Kentucky and Audric Estime, whichever running back that you want to get. But Benson's without question. If I had to take any running back in this draft, he'd be my guy.
I think I'll say this. This is probably the all-injury duo with J.K. Dobbins and Jonathan Brooks. So that probably would not work out. I think the ceiling would be incredibly high with that duo, but that's not necessarily my pick. I am going to stick with Jonathan Brooks for this scenario, though.
Okay.
And going to pair him up with A.J. Dillon and look at being firing up Jonathan Brooks. I love what Jonathan Brooks brings, and I think coming off of the injury, he will be just fine. His recovery, we've been hearing things about it over and over again about how he's going to be ready for training camp. Yeah. He's going to be ready to step in whenever he's drafted and pick up things very quickly. Out of Hallettsville, Texas, there in Central Texas, was a really productive runner, a top 10 Texas high school football all-time rusher, and then went to Texas, had the 1 year as a starter this past year, and did really well and excelled. I think if he ended up finishing the season, he would have been a big part of what they did in the playoff against Washington, maybe even helps push them to a win. But if you pair him with A.J. Dillon, then A.J. Dillon, he can come into the building, he can bring you that veteran presence, and he kind of serves as a buffer for Jonathan Brooks to get healthy, to get 100% back on the field. And I think by the time you're looking up week 4, week 5, you have a really talented backfield with Jonathan Brooks probably taking on the majority of the carries, and then you have an A.J. Dillon that can take on most of the brute force, and it can kind of take some stuff off of Jonathan Brooks' plate. I think that would be a really fun pairing. You
know what's interesting is in my notes, I put for Jonathan Brooks is DeMarco Murray, a crazy comp for him.
Yeah, I see where you're going with that. Because he can get out in open field. Yeah. He has the pass protection ability.
Big boy.
Yeah, he's boomer bust. I understand where you're coming from there. This next one comes from Christian Conte. How likely is it that a center and a tackle are picked in the first 3 rounds? If that is the case, who would your ideal duo be? How likely is it? I mean, I would put it at like 70%, man. Yeah. I think you have to get, as of right now, where free agency stands, you have to get those 2 positions early on in the draft. You got to have guys that can kind of come into those scenarios and be able to at least compete for a starting job. Who my ideal pairing would be? It would be getting a Marius Mims, throwing him out to left tackle, and then you're kind of hoping Zach Frazier's there at 56. But if he's not, I'm okay with Cedric Van Pran-Granger in the 3rd.
Man, that is tough. Yeah, I think I agree with you. I think it's very, very high. In fact, I'd go like 80%. I think that they're most likely coming away either picks 1-2, 1-3. They're going offensive line, I think, in the first round. I think if I had to choose, I don't love the way that it stretches with tackles as much as some others do. I mentioned the Yale offensive tackle. I do like quite a bit if they had to wait on that. I'm with you on Mims just to be different. If he fell, I don't think he did. My ideal solution would be Troy Fontenot out of Washington, the offensive tackle. He's absolutely fantastic. I don't know if he'll fall. I've changed my opinion on him because I thought the opposite of Jordan Morgan. I thought Fontenot is a guard. He has that build, but then he ended up being much taller at the combine when he went ahead and weighed in and he did his height weight. So to me, I think he can play tackle. He's got the athletic ability. That was never a conversation for me. At center, I'm with you on Van Pran. The other guy, if indeed they get wiped, would be Bo Limmer out of Arkansas. Yeah. I always come back to Bo Limmer. I love the way that he competes. Is he a little bit smaller maybe? People will watch what DeAndre Sweat did to him there at the Senior Bowl. I don't know if you got to see that rap, but he comes right back and he battles his rear off right afterwards. He's a dude. He's got great base, strong anchor. Pad leverage is something that is just natural for him. I do love me some Bo Limmer if indeed you get wiped and you're not able to get some of these top centers. So that'd be a tandem that would excite me is Fontenot and Limmer.
Okay, this is an interesting scenario here from Anthony O'Donnell. He says, in this scenario, you're trading back in the first and picking up a pick or 2.
Okay.
If Sweat is still on the board around 50 or so, do you trade up and grab him with those extra 2 picks that you kind of have as a buffer to be able to do that? Now, if you don't get extra picks, this is probably not a scenario. But if T'Vondre Sweat is sitting there and you see a defensive tackle with his size, with his ability, that could definitely help you on day 1, do you do that in that scenario?
Oh, man. I think that I need my picks.
Yeah,
so I'm going to say no.
Yeah, I'm with you.
I like T. Sweat, but to me, he's not a player that I'm going to be aggressive to move up and get. To be honest, the defensive tackle that would get me a little bit more fired up, that I'm saying, goodness gracious, I can't deny how delicious his tape is Braden Fisk from Florida State. Yeah. That guy, I mean, he's got some of the most eye-popping, wowing tape that you will see in the entire class. I love T. Sweat. He's got a really, really rare combination of size and speed, but his beamer's doing an excellent job of going back and forth. Braden Fisk is just a playmaker. I think you add an ability to come in wide, strong build inside the middle to help against the run, but he's got way more upside as a pass rusher to me. He's violent, he's dominant, high character guy, leader of that defense there at Florida State that was absolutely exceptional. I love Braden Fisk. I'd consider moving up to go and get him. I don't think I would for DeAndre Sweat, but the big thing is I just think you need those picks, and you could address defensive tackle if you wanted to a little bit later. And they look like that's where they're going to go. Yeah. Because I know you did an excellent job hustling, trying to figure out some names they were talking to. Mason Smith out of LSU being one of those guys. McKinley Jackson at Texas A&M. To me, those are early day 3 guys. Yeah. I think that's where they're going to address defensive tackle. Yeah, complete defensive tackle list that they interviewed at the Combine. Formerly, Chris Jenkins out of Michigan, Brandon Dorless out of Oregon, Tyron Sweat out of Texas, Ruke Oro out of Clemson, McKinley Jackson out of Texas A&M, Mason Smith out of LSU, and Michael Hall Jr. out of Ohio State. So they spent a lot of time at that position in Indianapolis. This next one comes from Anthony Gibbs. With the lack of free agent signings and missing the 4th, 5th round pick, granted you get the 5th back in the comp, but I see where you're going. Would you consider trading back from both your first and your second to gain extra picks? He says he feels like it's a must this year. I don't think it's a must. I think trading back in the first round, yeah, it's a high possibility. I think if you're looking there at pick 21 and a lot of these tackles are flying off the board, Jackson Powers Johnson's off the board, and you see an opportunity to move back 3 or 4 spots to still pick up a Graham Barton or still pick up a Jordan Morgan, I think that's a very, very realistic option as we look up on April 25th. But doing it in the second round, I don't necessarily feel that, because whenever you look at the second round value and the guys that they can get at that pick at 56, every single time, whether it be a Zach Frazier or a Edgerrin Cooper or a Tyron Sweat, it's like, gosh, I wish we were about 6 picks earlier. And I don't feel like you're going to have that luxury whenever you're sitting there at 56, because if you move back 3 or 4 spots, you're probably going to miss out on 3 or 4 guys you would have drafted. Yeah, I don't think you can move back in the second round. I agree with you. First round, I get it. There is a scenario where you can move back. Maybe you're still able to get a Tyler Guyton out of Oklahoma. You know, another name in the second round that I think would be in play if he's there and you're not able to address center would be Christian Haynes from UConn. Yes, sir. Love me some Christian Haynes. I know you've been high on him as well. You know, I do love BB as well, but I think Christian Haynes athletically would be able to kick over and play center better than Cooper Beebe would when you compare the two of them. So I don't think you can move back in the second round. I'm okay with sliding back a couple of picks. I've seen some mock trades that I do like with the Cowboys, specifically flipping, maybe it's Buffalo there at 28, because I think that's where maybe you can still get Graham Barton in play, and sign me up for that. I love me some Graham Barton. He's still the apple of my eye among these offensive linemen. So, yeah, I mean, I'm in on sliding back on day one, and I think that's ultimately going to give you enough draft capital to where you don't have to worry about that on day 2. Yeah, being firing up Christian Haynes here out of UConn. We talked about his versatility as a guard, but also playing at center, and he got some center reps at the Senior Bowl and shined in those reps. If y'all recall the Senior Bowl rep where Jordan Jefferson and him kind of got into it, and Jordan Jefferson threw his helmet around, that was Christian Haynes, but a really high character dude as well. He'd be awesome off the field. Our next question here comes from my guy Brandon Laurie. He said, looking at a potential trade back scenario, as we're talking about trade back scenarios, you're on the clock at pick number 24 and your phone rings. It's the Baltimore Ravens. They lost a starting guard and traded their right tackle in free agency. Graham Barton and Amarius Mims are on the board, and you feel like they're going to take them. But Baltimore offers you picks 30, so they have 30 in the first round, and 2 fourths, which is 113 and 135, to trade back. Do you do it, risking both offensive linemen not being there 6 spots later? And if you miss out, it's an out-of-conference team. You might not feel so bad losing those players. But
potential of losing Graham Barton and Amarius Mims, picking up pick 30 and 2 fourth-round picks.
No, I'm not doing that. One, it's Baltimore, and you know that just good players always fall to them. Every year we're doing this, we're looking, well, of course that ends up being a Baltimore Raven. No, if Amarius Mims is there at 24, I'm running the card in.
Yeah.
I'm not hesitating. To me, he's probably the best case scenario if you want one of these offensive tackles, just because you look at the talent, the upside. If the Cowboys evaluate him and say, hey, that's our dude in the first round, they know what they're doing. They clearly hit on first-round offensive linemen all the time. And his tape, I get it. You know, that's a question I've been asking a lot. The 8 games, does that make you nervous? No, it doesn't. Because when you look at the games that he played and you see the talent is there against Ohio State in that playoff matchup, he was absolutely outstanding. There's times where he gets out there in space and he's so darn big and athletic. I think he's just – it comes with the lack of awareness and the lack of playing time where he's not sure who do I need to block. But I think with coaching, the upside, Amarius Mims has everything that you could possibly want in an offensive tackle skill set. I am not passing on him if he's there at 24.
Yeah, I'm going to lean no on this scenario as well. I would probably maybe lean into it a little bit more if it was a third and a fourth or a second and a third, but what if, either way.
Is it which player is it that's making you say I can't get off of this? Is it Mims?
It's Mims, yeah.
So
because I feel like Barton could be there at 30.
Yeah, I do too. If it's Mims, sub him out with Guyton. Are you willing to make the trade?
Yeah.
Mims is gone.
Yeah.
It's Guyton or Barton.
I still don't feel great about it. Gosh, that was tough. Because I go back and forth.
I'll make the trade then.
I go back and forth.
I'm not sold on Guyton as much as some others, and I like him.
Yeah.
But I'd feel much better if I was able to get an extra pick, slide back. I'll take the risk on Mims because I think that the traits are rare with him. With Guyton, I see definitely a player that played a lot more, transferred from TCU to Oklahoma, for those that don't know, but I'm not as optimistic and confident in his ability. I certainly would not be upset if he was the pick at 24. There's traits and things that I like about Guyton's game, but I'd feel much better about adding those picks and moving back in that scenario. It's Mims that I'm not wanting to get off of.
Then I'll fall on the trust of my trusted Mid-South scout, Zach Wolchuk, am I right? And I'll trade back.
Let's do it. We're trading.
Let's do that. Let's get on the phone. Baltimore, we're going to go ahead and make that trade if Mims is off the board.
We have any others? Do we want one more?
Yeah, we could throw in one more.
And
I'm going to kind of alter this question a little bit. This one comes from Mike Crimmins. He said, with the current contract situation, is there any chance at a quarterback in round 1 or round 2? No. However, day 3,
Caleb Williams, if he falls, maybe.
He's there.
Maybe.
I've been seeing mock drafts that see Jaden Daniels slide. I don't know if it's like a PFF error or what, but he keeps showing up there at 24.
Doing?
He's not going to be there at 24, guys. I'm so sorry. If he's there at 10, I will do what Kyle did a few years back whenever CeeDee Lamb got drafted. I mean,
the marathon.
Yeah, whatever he did. Yeah, actually, I would die. I'm not going to do that. I'm not shaking on that.
Kudos to Kyle for that.
Kudos to Kyle. He's a better man than me. But I do want to talk about day 3 quarterback options because I think there could be an opportunity to do that. Looking at Michael Pratt out of Tulane, that is someone that this scouting department is taking a look at. He was productive in his years there in Uptown New Orleans. He's productive. He's clean. He doesn't make any mistakes. You look at all of the weapons that have come out of that offense: Tyjae Spears, Jaquan Jackson. He's a game manager, impressive pocket presence. He's going to be on a 53-man roster for whatever team drafts him. I'm a firm believer in that, and I think he's a 4th, 5th round option. That I think if he's sitting there and the Cowboys have addressed their needs, they're looking around at the quarterback room, want a little bit more of a competition there, go get a trusted guy like Michael Pratt, high floor guy that I think will start some games in the NFL.
Agreed with you. I think if you miss out on any of these top guys, Pratt is the dude for me. Another name just to throw out there that you might want to keep an eye on, Carter Bradley, quarterback from South Alabama. Just a small school player.
I have a funny story about him, but go ahead.
I like his moxie. I like the way he plays the game. I mean, he's a dude that the velocity at times, I'm like, okay, how did that ball just get there? But he's able to make all the throws. He's got a little bit of mobility. I like the way he navigates the pocket. Carter Bradley, if you're just looking for a flyer, that would be a day 3 pick, but there's no way Cowboys are taking somebody in the 1st or 2nd round at the quarterback position, in my opinion, unless there's just a rare scenario where somebody does have an Aaron Rodgers-like slide. I don't see that happening in this year's draft.
Yeah, at the Senior Bowl, which is at the University of South Alabama, where Carter Bradley played, I was talking with one of my scout friends kind of as we were walking in, and we were watching the quarterbacks kind of warm up, and we were kind of like, okay, that's so-and-so, that's so-and-so, who's that?
Yeah.
Who is that? oh, he's got a South Alabama hat on, so this is like the Make-A-Wish kid. Like that's what we were talking about. And then once they get going in practice, and you see
this kid can play,
he can spin it. And I kind of looked to him, I was like, hey man, this is not that at all. Like this kid can throw it. So yeah, I like Carter Bradley as well. I think he gets drafted.
I'm also surprised Sam Hartman with the hair. He's just not getting more love.
Man, it's
Sam Hartman,
Lord Farquaad.
what a crazy scenario. He was mocked to go in the first round a lot of the time when you were looking preseason, and now he's looking like maybe he's a 6th, 7th round pick. That's also a name that maybe a team, it'd probably be a solid backup throughout his entire career.
I said that he won't win you a game, but he won't lose you one either.
Right. Just steady guy. You know what you're kind of going to get from him. Yeah. All right, there's another edition of Twitter on the 20 coming up next on the Draft Show. I'm excited about this. I went ahead, I did some work. I've got 3 different mock draft scenarios. Pick it. Which one do you want out of these stacks of 3 players? We'll do that next year as the Draft Show rolls on.
Hi, Drew Pearson, former Dallas Cowboy and now Pro Football Hall of Famer here. If you're struggling with your vision and tired of those contacts and glasses, don't throw a Hail Mary. Go where I went. Laser Care Eye Center, the official LASIK partner of the Dallas Cowboys.
Drew, thank you so much for trusting us with your vision correction procedure. At Laser Care Eye Center, we offer 6 different vision correction procedures to help patients see.
Check them out at dfweyes.com. Tell them Drew sent you. Hood, hood.
In a stressful world, Lincoln provides balance and calm amidst the chaos by creating sanctuaries that move you through the world with ease. Our vehicles make your time richer and more uplifting with human-centric design, intelligent technology, and powerful performance. As the official luxury vehicle of the Dallas Cowboys, driving a Lincoln is just another way to show your team pride. Experience our full lineup of luxury vehicles, including the Corsair, Aviator, Navigator, and Nautilus at Lincoln.com.
I'm Dak Prescott, quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys.
And they snap it to Prescott, who looks right. It's not there. He escapes left. He'll run for a first down.
Just like football, when it comes to crypto, it's important to have a team you can trust. With blockchain.com, I know I'm in good hands. Since 2011, they've been trusted by millions around the world to buy, sell, and trade cryptocurrency.
Prescott's going to run this himself. Run it up the middle, and he scores.
Whether you're new to crypto or an active trader, they've got you covered. What are you waiting for? Get started at blockchain.com.
Hi, I'm Danny McCray, Dallas Cowboys alumni player here with Smoothie King. And Smoothie King wants to ask you, what's that sound? That's the sound of us magically transforming our smoothie bowls into 2 new decadent flavors. Dig into a cool acai or pitaya bowl, handcrafted with crunchy, purely Elizabeth granola, fresh strawberries, and finished with a velvety chocolate hazelnut drizzle. Perfect for breakfast, lunch, or anytime you want to munch. And that's the sound of you making them disappear. Smoothie bowls, now in 2 new decadent flavors. Only at Smoothie King, the official smoothie of the Dallas Cowboys.
This is the DallasCowboys.com Draft Show.
All right, let's have some fun with this. We've got 3 different 3-round mock draft scenarios. I've put this together. I've even put some of the other options for each pick that were still on the board. But first, let's go through which stack of 3 do you prefer here,
Okay.
Nick Harris. Mock draft number 1. 24th pick, Cowboys take Tyler Guyton, offensive tackle out of Oklahoma. They circle back in the 2nd round at 56. They take Junior Colson, linebacker out of Michigan. And then in the 3rd round, pick 87, Trey Benson, running back out of Florida. So they get Guyton, Colson, Benson. That is a pretty nice stack.
Look, man, I like this
of
one.
3 players right there.
I don't love Guyton, as we mentioned, but I like this pairing of players. Let's keep going here.
Okay, number 2 scenario. Pick 24.
Really quick, do you think Benson's there in the 3rd?
No.
I don't think so either.
I don't think Benson makes it to the 3rd round.
Okay.
I think that's wishful thinking in that mock draft. Pick 24, Brian Thomas Jr., wide receiver out of LSU. Cowboys decide, hey, maybe this is a scenario they're wiped out on tackle. We're going to go with the wide receiver, the playmaker to stretch the field. Pick 56, then they go with Trey Benson, running back out of Florida State. Think that's more likely. And in the 3rd round, pick 87, they address linebacker Cedric Gray, linebacker out of North Carolina, which I know you like, you worry about his fit. Maybe you feel better about the fit now that they've addressed with Eric Kendricks. You got Thomas, Benson, Gray.
That was a question that was in the Twitter on the 20 replies. I want to address that really quick. I do feel a little bit better with that.
Okay.
I'm with you. I do feel a little bit. I don't feel great still, but I feel a little bit better with that.
I kind of love the idea of him learning under Kendricks. That excites me a lot. Mock draft 3, Troy Fontenot, offensive tackle out of Washington at 24, does slide to the Cowboys.
Okay.
56, they address center, Cedric Van Pran, center out of Georgia. And then at pick 87, Jonathan Brooks, running back at Texas. So your 3 sets here, you've got Guyton, Colson Benson, Brian Thomas Jr., Trey Benson, Cedric Gray, and then the offensive tackle Fontenot, the center Van Pran, and the running back Jonathan Brooks. All 3 fun scenarios. Then we can go through and debate, would we have still taken these players based on who else was available?
Okay. With scenario 1 here, with Guyton, Colson, Benson, you're addressing some needs. You don't necessarily get your center. With the second one, with Thomas Jr., Benson, Gray, you're not addressing a lot of needs at all. The offensive line is still very, very much a big concern. You're going to have to go into day 2, day 3 with just straight offensive line and hope you hit on 1 or 2 of those. The third one, you address both offensive line needs and you get a running back. Oh, man, this one's tough. I'm going to lean towards this third one, Fontenot, Van Pran, Brooks. And I think if you gave me a better tackle than Guyton in that first scenario, then I'd probably roll with that one. But I trust Fontenot. I think he can come in and be a dog at left tackle. I also think he can kind of work with Tyler Smith to figure out who is the best left tackle / left guard. Van Pran, I think with a year or 2 under his belt, he's going to be a really good starting center in this league. And then Jonathan Brooks, y'all know how I feel about him. So you address some needs, you get some high impact guys as far as year 1. I will say, though, that scenario, too, I'm looking at it, and I'm licking my chops a little bit. But you have to be okay with the fact that you probably don't make the playoffs next year if you draft those 3 guys.
Yeah, because those 3 players are all really, really good.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. I think that the best tackle, the best first-round pick out of the bunch is Troy Fontenot, the offensive tackle from Washington. I'm in on Van Pran. To me, I mean, he's a guy that won back-to-back national championships, and he anchored the center of that line. You've seen him go against some big-body defensive tackles there in the SEC, holds his own. I think he's got some strength. Maybe the athleticism is something you're not grading as high as Jackson Powers-Johnson, maybe even a Zach Frazier in this draft. But I like Van Pran. I think he would be a solid option there at 56. I prefer him in the 3rd round at 87. I think 56 might be a little high.
I agree, 100%.
But you might, if you're looking at a situation where, look, all the centers are gone, I want to make sure I get one. That's a solid option. Then Jonathan Brooks at 87, I love. Yeah. I think that's the sweet spot for him. If I don't have to reach and take him in the 2nd because there's a run on running backs, if I can get Jonathan Brooks at 87, I feel really, really good about it.
Do you don't feel like he's the first one off the board?
I think it's going to be Benson.
Okay. But I think he's first 3 at least.
Yeah, I think they're the first 2.
Okay.
But I think there's a debate. I think some teams might have Jonathan Brooks as their number 1 running back. I think a lot would if it weren't for the injury.
Yeah.
I just wonder. And look, if he's going to be available for training camp and the medicals clear out, teams aren't worried about it, he very well could be the first one off the board.
Yeah, I agree. I think the running back run there in the 2nd round, wherever it begins, I think it's going to kick off around 40 to 45. That's when you're going to see where these running backs are valued as far as the draft process and kind of how they play out. But Brooks being there at 87, yeah, that would be too good to pass up.
Which one of those scenarios do you want to talk about? Who else was available? See if we agree with these picks.
Let's go with that first one.
The first one,
yeah,
okay.
What tackle was available there at 24?
So Guyton was the only tackle.
Okay.
But you did have Zach Frazier available, the center from West Virginia, excuse me. Graham Barton was available from Duke, and Laitu Latu, the edge from UCLA.
It doesn't make me bite, but that's fascinating.
I wondered.
Kingsley Suamatia available?
Kingsley Suamatia was available. Would you go Suamatia over Guyton?
No, but I think that's an opportunity where you could potentially trade back, pick up a couple spots.
Okay.
Jordan Morgan, was he available?
No.
Okay. I think that's an opportunity where you could trade back, pick a couple of picks, and kind of plug in Suamatia as you feel necessary. But I like Guyton. I do. I don't want to say that I'm out on Guyton. I just think he's going to take a little bit of development. He's going to really piss off some fans wherever he goes in his rookie year. But I think as he develops and as he gets better, I think he's going to be an all-pro.
In what way is he going to be ticking fans off?
Yeah, I think it's a lack of development. It's a lack of experience there at the tackle position, especially if you're moving him to the left side.
Yeah.
You just got to be able to account for those things. It's a little bit of all of that. He plays with the high pad level. Guys are going to get under him. He's going to struggle against athletic pass rushers. He's just going to have to be able to kind of account for that.
It's interesting. My highest graded player out of those is Latu. So if I'm not window addressing the board, as Ryan Veronis would say, I'm taking Latu in that scenario. That doesn't make you bite at all?
It does. You just don't need that in the first round.
You don't, but I mean...
You don't. Yeah. Okay. Let's say
what are we doing? Are we doing BPA? Are we doing BPA?
Let's say you take Latu.
I've also got Barton ahead of Guyton, so I think it'd be between Barton or Latu for me in that scenario.
Let's say you take Latu, Colson, Benson. You have no offensive line that you've addressed there.
I know. You're pretty screwed.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's how this falls. All right, so let's say we took Latu for fun. Pick 56, they go Junior Colson. You'll also have Keon Coleman, wide receiver, Florida State, on the board.
At 56?
At 56.
Wow.
I know, shocking. DeAndre Sweat, Texas, defensive tackle. And Mike Sanderstill, the cornerback from Michigan. Hopefully I said his last name right.
Yeah, I'm taking... oh, man. I think I'm still taking Colson there, but Sweat is making me go back and forth.
Sweat's making you sweat?
Sweat's making me sweat a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm going to take Colson. I think he's more the sure thing.
If I'm going based on my board again, it's Coleman. And I know we're not addressing
Coleman?
It's Keon Coleman.
Keon Coleman.
You know, if I'm not window addressing, I'm going BPA. It's Latu, it's Coleman. Those would be my two picks. For a Cowboys perspective, if I'm taking all things considered, yeah, I'd be interested in Sweat. To be honest, out of these three players, Sweat's my third.
Yeah.
Which stinks.
Yeah.
But I think for me, I'm going. I gotta stay true. Got to stay true to the board here. All right, we look up 4 years from now. How are we feeling?
Yeah.
This isn't about right now.
Yeah.
I'm trying to draft some all pros. Latu, Coleman, number 3 when they take Benson, Patrick Paul, tackle from Houston's available.
Okay.
Cedric Van Pran, center from Georgia's available. Chris Abrams-Drain, cornerback from Mizzou.
I don't think you could talk me into anything other than Benson here.
Yeah. Now, even if we don't have any linemen, we've gone Latu, and we've gone you go T Sweat. I'm going to go. Coleman.
I mean, you kind of already given into the fact that you're not getting an elite offensive lineman, so you may as well just go ahead and take your running back. He won't be able to run through between the tackles, but he might in a couple of years.
Oh man, yeah. I think in this scenario, you're right. Benson's my top guy.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, who the heck am I going to have to block? But I guess we're going to rock with TJ Bass and Brock Kaufman.
Yeah.
And we're just going to line up and say, let's party. But I do love the players that we've got here.
You touched on something a little bit, and I kind of want to make it a deeper conversation.
Let's do it.
Because I think some fans are kind of looking at it a similar way. You look at how they've addressed free agency. You look at the needs around the building going into the draft. That there's still a lot to play out in free agency in the next couple of weeks. But let's say that they enter the draft with what we know right now. Do you plan for the future or do you plan for this year? I think you plan more for the future.
I think
if that's the case, you look at a scenario too with Brian Thomas Jr., Trey Benson, and Cedric Gray. You just say, hey man, we're just not going to block this year. Because what's the point there? You go pick up your offensive line next year, but you have really good weapons in Brian Thomas Jr. and Trey Benson to build for the future. Mm-hmm. I think it's a thought. I'm not saying I'm going in on that, but fans have addressed that on Twitter with me a little bit, and we've had some back and forth there. If you don't feel comfortable about the potential of the Cowboys going into 2024, and you don't feel like the needs can help get them to a Super Bowl or wherever else they feel like they can reach, do you just start building for the future then? Granted, Jerry Jones did say that his definition of all in is drafting for this year. Mm-hmm. And that was part of his definition, is drafting for this year, not drafting for the future, not making moves for the future. So the likeliness of this happening, probably not high. But I think it's something you think about.
Yeah, I am future. I think that's how you have to address when you get caught into I'm drafting for need in this year. And I think when this team has run into troubles where their drafts aren't as good as some others, maybe last year you look at that.
Yeah.
Maybe they're saying, man, we got to get better against the run. Mozzie Smith's our pick.
Yeah.
Man, we really need so we lost Dalton Schultz. We've got to go out there. We need a better blocking tight end. Luke Schoonmaker's our pick, right? When you're starting to draft for need over trusting
that's a good point.
The evaluation and who we've got on our stack here, that's where you start to run into trouble. So, yeah, am I worried about how we're going to line up? Maybe. But I know that I've got football players that we've graded highly that I think we're going to look up and have the potential to be Pro Bowl, maybe all pros if we hit on them, and we're going to feel really good because the needs that I have right now are not the same needs I'm going to have next year. You're telling me you couldn't use another receiver? Yeah. Is edge not a sneaky need for this football team?
Absolutely.
So you're still addressing your needs. You're just not maybe addressing your biggest glaring red flag weaknesses right now. But I think what the draft is all about, especially for this team, when it's drafting, developing, and then re-signing your own.
Yeah.
That is a premium here with the Dallas Cowboys. We want to get to a second contract. You might not get that if you're going to reach for a player just because, hey, we really need a center. Oh, we really need an offensive tackle. If I've got Laitu Latu, who I think is the best edge in this class, fall to me at 24, I'm not passing him up.
Yeah, you make some good points there, and I think that's very valid too about Latu specifically. You look around the room. Dorrance Armstrong, Dante Fowler, out going to Washington. DeMarcus Lawrence is on the back end of his career. You would like to have a guy that can be that primary edge rusher, opposite of Micah Parsons as time goes on. So yeah, I wouldn't be upset with Latu. I think what I struggle with going anywhere other than tackle in the first round is the fact that this tackle class is so deep. And I feel like you can get a guy there at 24 that in years past you would have to get at 19 or 18. And I just feel like the value is really there, need or not. I think it's, and it just happens to be a need. It works out for the team. But I think need or not, going to get a tackle, especially if a good one like Amarius Mims, J.C. Latham, I'll throw in Tyler Guyton, Jordan Morgan, Troy Fontenot. If one of those guys is there, take him.
And ultimately, I think that's where it's going to be. And I lean taking an offensive lineman there at 24 more than anything. But, man, it just depends. It depends who slides there. The one I want to do with you real quick before we boogie out of here, that pick 87 in the second mock scenario where they go Cedric Gray. The other three options, Braylon Trice, edge out of Washington, Johnny Wilson, Florida State receiver, and Blake Corum, running back from Michigan. Now, obviously, that would be, hey, you don't take Trey Benson at 56 in that scenario, and you take Cooper Beebe, Adonai Mitchell, Johnny Newton, the defensive tackle from Illinois, was sitting there. You go with one of those other options, and then you'd consider Blake Corum. But out of that stack of four, let's say you don't have a running back yet, so Corum's more in play. You didn't take Benson there in the second round. Out of those four guys, Gray, Trice, Wilson, Corum, who would you take?
This is factoring in that Benson was not taken in the second round?
No, let's say you went Cooper Beebe out of K-State.
Okay, run me through the four names again.
Cedric Gray, linebacker, North Carolina. Braylon Trice, edge, Washington. Johnny Wilson, wide receiver, Florida State. And Blake Corum, running back, Michigan.
I'm between Gray and Corum here. I think I go Gray because I feel more comfortable about the running back depth on day 3 than I do the linebacker depth. Although I do feel like there's some good options there on day 3 as well. I'm okay with either pick. I really am. I think Gray gives you more longevity than Corum. We've talked about Corum. I love Corum. I do. I think there are concerns about how many hits he can take. Can he get to a second contract? And if you're looking for a guy to get to a second contract, I think Cedric Gray is probably your better option. So in that case, I'd probably take Gray. But if you're looking for a guy that can come in and immediately produce year 1, then you take Corum. I think it's just kind of the answer to that question kind of answers what it is for the War Room.
Right. I agree. I'm going to go with Cedric Gray. I think I've got him graded higher. Honestly, Braylon Trice would be in the conversation for me. I do like Braylon Trice there. You don't love him? I know a lot of people that feel the same way as you do. I think in the third round at 87, that's good value. He doesn't have a lot of bend, but Braylon Trice, the motor, I like him a little bit more. I see more upside and potential in terms of the pass rushing there than some others. But ultimately, I think I'd still go Cedric Gray. So I agree with you there. This has been fun, man. Thank you for hanging out with me.
Hey, we got to do this every show. We got to box everybody out.
Get on out of here, boys.
Man.
The rest of the crew will be back on Tuesday. Thank you so much to Chris Beam, as always. Of course, you, Nick Harris, myself, Zach Wolchuk. Keep partying, keep mock drafting. Hit us up on the socials. Appreciate you, homie. That's a wrap for this edition of the Draft Show.
This has been a production of DallasCowboys.com and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.
How about this, Cowboys? Yeah!